Imagine this. You're late to work. Traffic is at a standstill. The person in front of you hasn't moved for 3 minutes. Your phone buzzes. It's your boss. Your blood pressure rises. Your jaw tightens. And somewhere in your chest, a fire starts. Now, here's a question the Stoics would ask you. Did any of that actually happen to you? Or did you let it happen in you? Over 2,000 years ago, a group of philosophers figured out something that most people today still don't understand. Almost everything that upsets you is optional. I want to show you exactly how they figured that out, and more importantly, how you can use it through your day-to-day life. So let's start with the basics. Who were the Stoics? Stoicism was a school of philosophy that began in Athens around 300 BC, founded by a guy named Zeno of Citium, who apparently started teaching after being shipwrecked and losing everything, which honestly tracks. But the three names you need to know for this video are Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome, one of the most powerful men who ever lived, and he spent his nights writing private journal entries to remind himself to be a better person. Those notes became a book called Meditations, which he never intended anyone to read. Epictetus was a former slave. He had nothing. He was literally owned by another man, and yet he became one of the most respectable philosophers of his age, because his ideas on freedom were unlike anything people had heard before. And then Seneca, a statesman, playwright, and advisor to the emperor, rich, powerful, controversial, and deeply obsessed with how to live and die well. Three widely different lives, one shared philosophy, and it all comes down to one idea. Epictetus opens his famous manual, the Enchiridion, with a single sentence that, if you actually internalize it, changes everything. Some things are in our control and others not. That's it. That's the whole foundation of Stoicism. Things within your control, your thoughts, your judgments, your reactions, your choices, your effort. And then you have things outside your control. Other people's behavior, the weather, your reputation, traffic, your past, your body's health, whether your flight is delayed. Now here's where it gets really interesting, and a little uncomfortable. The Stoics said, every time you feel upset, anxious, or angry, it's because you are placing value on something outside of your control. Think about that for a second. You're not upset because traffic exists. You're upset because you believe traffic shouldn't exist, that somehow reality is obligated to match your preference, and when it doesn't, you suffer. Epictetus puts it this way. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the opinions about things. This is a radical idea. It's saying nothing has inherent power to upset you. You give it that power. You decide what things mean, and that decision, that judgment, is always within your control. I know what you might be thinking. Okay, but what about genuinely terrible things? Grief, loss, injustice? And that's a fair pushback. The Stoics weren't saying don't feel anything. They weren't robots. Marcus Aurelius lost children. Epictetus was enslaved. Seneca was eventually forced to take his own life. They felt pain. The difference is they didn't add unnecessary suffering on top of it. There's a phrase for this in modern psychology, the second arrow. The first arrow is the event. Something bad happens. The pain is real. But the second arrow, that's where we shoot ourselves. The rumination, the self-pity, the anger, the why me. The Stoics were master at not firing the second arrow. Let's bring this into the real world with Marcus Aurelius, because his meditations are essentially a masterclass in applying these ideas under pressure. Remember, this guy was running the Roman Empire during wars, plagues, and constant political betrayal, and he's writing private notes to himself like, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Or in this one, which I think is one of the most practical pieces of advice in all of philosophy. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own. Think about what he's doing here. He's not being cynical. He's doing something called negative visualization, preloading realistic expectations so that when someone is rude to him, he's not blindsided. He expected it. And because he expected it, he can respond thoughtfully instead of reacting emotionally. This is the Stoic version of preparing for your day. Not affirmations, not today will be amazing, but today will have friction. I will be ready for it, and my peace is not dependent on whether it goes smoothly. Here's another thing Marcus came back to again and again. The obstacle is the way. Whatever tries to block you can also be used by you. Traffic is an obstacle, but it's also 10 uninterrupted minutes to think clearly, listen to something meaningful, or just breathe. The frustrating colleague is an obstacle, but also has a chance to practice patience. The Stoic reframe isn't toxic positivity. It's not traffic is actually great. It's I cannot move this traffic, but I can choose what I do with this time. So, how do you actually use this stuff? Because philosophy that doesn't translate to your Tuesday morning is just trivia. Here are the 3 Stoic practices you can start today. Practice 1, the morning audit. Before your day begins, ask yourself, what today is within my control and what isn't? Mentally separate the two. Your performance in a meeting, in your control. Whether your boss likes you, not in your control. Focus only on the first list. Release the second. Then there's practice 2, the pause before reacting. The Stoics called this the space between stimulus and response. Someone cuts you off in traffic, sends a passive aggressive email, disappoints you. Before you react, physically pause. Take one breath, ask, is this in my control? What's the best response I'd be proud of? That half-second gap is where your freedom lives. Lastly, there's practice 3, the evening reflection. Marcus Aurelius did this. Seneca wrote about it. At the end of each day, ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do well today? Where did I let external things disturb me that I didn't need to? What do I do differently tomorrow? Not to beat yourself up, just to see clearly. These aren't complicated habits. They're cognitive shifts, ways of catching yourself in the moment of suffering and asking, am I reacting to reality or to my story about reality? Here's the thing about Stoicism that I think it's misunderstood. People hear, don't let things upset you, and think it means become emotionally flat, detached, cold. But that's not what the Stoics meant at all. Epictetus, a man who was enslaved, was one of the most warmest and most human teachers in all of ancient history. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men alive, spent his private moments worrying about whether he was kind enough, present enough, or good enough. Stoicism isn't about feeling less. It's about not being a prisoner to what you feel. It's the difference between being moved by life and swept away by it. And in a world that is constantly trying to hook your attention, trigger your reactions, and sell you the idea that your mood depends on your circumstances, that distinction might be the most valuable thing you can develop. Quoting Epictetus, he who is brave is free. Think about what you actually want to be free from and ask yourself honestly whether it's actually holding you captive or whether you just never questioned that it had to. If you want to go deeper on this, I'd highly recommend checking out Marcus Aurelius' Meditations and Epictetus Enchiridion, as they both are free to read online and both are genuinely life changing. Life is a constant revolving battle with factors you can't always control. Learning, adapting, overcoming, they're all things we must endure. But if you are making the effort, watching, learning, growing, I'd say you already have made it further than most I know. It's not an easy battle, but it is our responsibility to be better, to lead the leading example, to be kind, to be stoic. I hope I was able to help you in any way, shape, or form, and I hope you have a beautiful day.